Hello and welcome to the fifth of our summary videos for the tutorial this winter term. Today the topic is God Bless America, American Civil Religion, and the learning goals are to basically be able to describe what this is and also to be able to link it to structures of feeling, that we can describe the relation of American civil religion to other religious practices and the state as such, then also delve into contemporary and also historical examples of American civil religion. So basically, how was it used in popular music? How is the reception thereof? How does it feature in history and also the school system, the current political scene? So that is what we're going to talk about today. The keywords for today are, of course, American civil religion and also ideology and Robert Bella, and we will come across why those are important in a second. But first, let's have a look at what that actually is, American civil religion. The term comes from a background of Rousseau, a French philosopher, and he formulated simple dogmas of civil religion. So basically, God or a higher entity exists, there is a life to come, the reward of virtue, and the punishment of vice, and the exclusion of religious intolerance. And this is, in a way, not really specific to any religion. So this can be applied to different religions. Of course, it stems from Christian motives, but it is very unspecific in a way. There is a rough framework. And now this rough framework is however used to bind the masses, so the people of a society, to the state where confessions can't do that, according to Haberski. And also really delves into the affect of the masses. So basically, we have a certain community shared idea of, okay, this is what we go for, this is our national religion, for example, and this is, in the case of the American civil religion, as civil religion, not really related to this is Catholic Christianity, for example, but rather this is our shared religion that is closely entwined with the state. But this is where it comes from, so this French philosopher. And now, another very important concept here is ideology. Ideology can be described as the coherent system of ideas behind any greater social, political, or moral system. So basically, if you have Germany as a federal republic, then you have a certain ideology in the background. For example, we are a democracy, we have certain values, and the whole system is the ideology. So, what we also can say is that culture is always ideological because it is the way of life of a certain people at a certain point of time. So, we have shared traditions, we have shared meanings, shared ways of expressing those meanings, and all in all, we have a shared idea of, okay, what is this all about? What is the logic behind the system? And that is ideology. Now, civil religion is in so far an ideology as that it is also a coherent idea behind the whole system of, in that case, the US. And ideology works in so far as that it provides a shared framework and then also gives people in a way a place in the system. So if you have a certain idea of, okay, what is this society about? What are the morals, beliefs, the ideas that are prevalent in that society? Of course, you can find your own position in that society. What is possible for me? What is not possible? Who am I? What can I relate to? So basically, ideology infiltrates all the meanings and all the practices of society. If you want to read more on that, I would ask you to confer Louis Althusser, who is also French, and who wrote extensively about ideology and also ideological state apparatuses, so basically institutions of the state that distribute ideology, like government, but also school, for example. Every institution in society that can actually distribute ideology and those beliefs, those meanings, and this system of ideas. Now, let's take the background of Rousseau and the concept of ideology and have a look at an essay that Robert Bella wrote or published in 1967. It's called Civil Religion in America, and it was published amidst the Cold War and actually catered very much to the sentiment of the people at that time. And in that essay, he basically tries to describe what he terms civil religion in the American context. And on the following slides, we will just go over some quotes from that essay and basically have a look, okay, how does he describe that? What does he mean by that? And later we will apply all that on the historical and contemporary context. So Bellard describes American civil religion as an agnostic form of a political theology. So basically, it is somewhat related to religion, but on the other hand, it's also a very theoretical form. It's a theology. It is political. It is agnostic. So we have certain words that are keywords here. And I think the basis of the whole system can be described by the separation of church and state has not denied the political realm a religious dimension. And that is now coming to terms here. We have a separation of church and state in a way, but on the other hand, the political realm, so the state, can still have this religious dimension where basically the people are tied to the system in a way that resembles religion, also uses tropes from religion, but is not one's private religion as it is. Now, let's have a look at some quotes from the essay that hopefully make clearer what is meant by that. Now, Bellard relates to this American civil religion as a theme that lies very deep in the religion in American tradition. So, the obligation, both collective and individual, to carry out God's will on earth. If that rings a bell, if you have watched the previous videos, then yes, of course, that relates very much to those ideas of we have a promised land. So the white settlers come to the Americas and have the promised land. They have the idea of the manifest destiny, that they are basically the chosen people who are supposed to work for good, to work for God also, and fulfill God's will. And this is, of course, a very Christian motive. But here in the idea of American civil religion, it's taken up and then also made more secular. So basically, no, is it more secular? Actually, I don't know. It's worldly. So basically, not so religious, not so tied to as one certain religion, but rather unspecific, and because of that, more applicable to other fields, to basically many people from different religions, and also to a whole political system as such. What is also important here is that ACR is basically linked to what certain people who make the rules for that religion or make the rules, because it is constantly in the making. It can have new themes. So basically, what are the people who have the authority of defining that, thinking is appropriate under certain circumstances? So if we have the origins of American civil religion in the founding fathers' speeches and beliefs, then that is of course very closely tied to Christian religion and to also the ideas that stem from the Puritans and the Pilgrims way back. And now, for example, with relation to the Civil War, a new theme of death, sacrifice, and also martyrism enters the civil religion. So basically, we have certain ideas historically, and then they develop with new themes arriving. So basically, these American civil religion can mean a lot because it's also very context dependent. It is also always somehow determined by the people who are in that system, who have the authority to speak, and who basically then also introduce new themes and link them to pre-existing frameworks in American civil religion. Now, then here we also have some other quotes, and those already go into the direction of, okay, why could American civil religion be a structure of feeling? So basically, quote, the American civil religion is not the worship of the American nation, unquote. So basically, it's not we worship this nation as a godlike entity, but, and now we quote again, an understanding of the American experience in the light of ultimate and universal reality, unquote. So basically, yes, we link the American nation and the context somehow to the divine realm, but we do not view this nation as this is God, but rather what we are doing here is related to God, is related to religious purposes, is related to something good, but not to a specific religion, but rather as a whole. It's linked to, okay, this is in God's name, but not the God of the Christian only, but in a sense, just we have something that binds us all and that is bigger than ourselves. So basically, if we think back to nationalism and Anderson's concept of the nation as an imagined community, imagined both sovereign and limited, the idea of the sovereign nation is what is taken up here. So in that context, we said sovereign means, okay, the nation is sovereign because we don't have a king anymore. And here we have exactly that. The king previously in history was set in place by the gods, at least that's what people said. So basically, we have this link of the basically head of state to God, to a divine entity. And this happens here as well. So basically, the American nation is linked to the divine. And because of that, the experience of being American, the experience of living in that community, the understanding of oneself and the system around one, the whole ideology foots on basically having this link between the nation and the divine. Now, religion, in the sense of Christian religion, played, quoting here, a crucial role in the development of American institutions and still provides a religious dimension to the whole fabric of American life, including the political sphere, unquote. And here we actually have something which relates to the link between Christianity and American civil religion. Because, of course, those are not unentangled or disentangled, because we have this history. We have the Pilgrims and the Puritans, those ideas, manifest destiny, the promised land, taken up, very prevalent themes in all American history. Then we have the Declaration of Independence, we have the Civil War. So basically, we have a lot of developments that borrow from Christianity, and it is exactly the same with American civil religion. It borrows from Christianity, and it feeds into what American civil religion is. So Christianity feeds into what it is, but it cannot be equated, basically. And we also, in Bilal's essay, can read that American civil religion borrowed selectively from the religious tradition in such a way that the average American saw no conflict between them. So basically, you do have your own private religion, for example, Catholic Christianity or Protestantism or whatever. And then the borrowing that American civil religion does is so selectively that it can function as a religious belief alongside another religion. So basically, people can be Catholic, but still they can also follow the rules and rituals of American civil religion, because that is not really interfering with each other, but more or less a little bit separate. And now with the whole lot of more or less and what could that be, and there's a link, but there's not a link, let's try to visualize that. So, how can American civil religion be linked to other religious practices and also to the state? And so, how I imagine that is we have American civil religion in the middle as some kind of building bridges, being in between, also specific in the sense that it is also dynamic and it can change. So, you do have a certain form, a certain, idea of American civil religion and certain prevalent themes at a given point in time due to the context. And now, what is important here is that the state, as such, with its laws and morals, also the people involved, so presidents, people who actually also die for that nation, so the actors or active people in that, symbols, narratives, also ideas, everything that is in the state as a system feeds into American civil religion. And then also religion feeds into it. And here we have Christianity, of course, because of history, as a very prevalent theme. So basically, with symbols, you have narratives, ideas, and also God as the entity to whom we tie that. That comes from Christianity, but we use it very selectively, so that basically, in the American civil religion, we relate the state, so laws, morals, people, symbols, ideas, everything, to Christian symbols, narratives, ideas, and this idea of we have a God and this is an entity bigger than ourselves. And it comes together and allows people to really be very closely tied to the state and the whole system of the US. So basically, see, for example, presidents as God's chosen figures in a way, relating to the nation as sovereign here. Also, that if someone dies for that nation, it's a sacrifice for the greater good. So the idea of we have a greater good, we have this directions, let's say, in the whole political system, that would be American civil religion. And other religions do, of course, also play a role because people have individual religions. But American civil religion would then be so unspecific that people from different religious backgrounds can still relate on that topic with regard to American civil religion. So if whatever background you come from, you can still relate to the American civil religion because it's unspecific enough to relate to it, and it's so closely connected to the state and something that we, or people in that society, universally share. I don't. My British accent gives me away. Now, we basically have this interconnection, so the state and religion both feed into American civil religion. It is neither the state nor religion, but it's something in between that actually serves extremely well to connect the people and also give a certain devotion to the state system and feed into a certain experience of what does it mean to experience life as a person in America at a given point in time and tied to American civil religion, as civil religion. And now this sounds very much like Raymond Williams, and yes, of course, the next slide is structures of feeling. So basically the question of how is American civil religion linked to the structures of feelings in the US, historically, and also in the contemporary context. Now, in one of the last weeks, I gave you this beautiful, I don't know if it's beautiful, but it's definitely full with stuff, overview of American history. And this focuses very much on the 19th century. And now one thing that I would ask you to is, okay, think of manifest destiny. So the idea that it is the preordained, destiny of the American people in the sense of the white settlers, not in the sense of the Native Americans, but the white settlers, to bring civilization, to colonize the whole continent, to basically develop and spread on the American continent. So basically, the idea that we are the white settlers, we come in, it's our destiny to basically be everywhere and impose our culture everywhere. That was the belief that they had, and they tied it to Christianity. And now, this, of course, is very much tied to American civil religion. So, this idea of, okay, we have something that is godlike, taken from God, but also intertwined with the state. And if you view those political developments and decisions in that light, you can see that the idea of American civil religion provides a very big justification for all those measurements. And in a way, is prevalent, even though, of course, Bella wrote his essay way later, but it's something that is as old as the 19th century in the US context, and we can find evidence for something like a civic religion or civil religion existing all the way along. So having this shared idea and this big devotion to the state as a more or less God-linked divine entity. But this is, of course, not everything. And as this overview implies, there is a now, and the question of how is that relevant today? And that's what we're going to look at now. So, yes, let's have a look at Donald Trump again, because he is the current president, and, well, thus he is a very prime example of how are old narratives taken up again and used. And here we have basically two quotes from his inauguration speech. So basically, he gets president, and this is what he says. He speaks about the Bible, he speaks about God's people, he speaks about God bless you and God bless America, and here we go. We have religion, God as an entity used basically in the context of American nationalism and basically very much linked to the state, to the political system. This is, yes, of course, he mentions the Bible. This is very Christian. But in general, it's not this is Catholic, this is that certain religion. It's rather general. Because of that, it's pretty applicable. Of course, that he uses the Bible limits that a little bit. Now, in his next inauguration, in the second one in 2025, basically he uses God again. He uses religion again. He has this quote of, quote, just a few months ago in that beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again, unquote. And there we have God. We have America and God really in one sentence, and basically this linking of divine entities, of the divine, destiny, and America once more. And the same goes with the second quote. Basically, I'm not going to read that out. I don't like reading out Trump quotes. Basically, this link to God, and we will not forget our God, is very strong. And so basically, in political speeches, we have this link to the divine a lot. So what we can say here is that American civic religion is linked to these structures and feelings in the US because it's basically used all the time as a justification in rituals, also in everyday life. We will come to that in a second. And it's both historical and contemporary. And now I just want to give you some more examples, and I will not analyze all of them because one thing, I don't have time. And the second thing is, I think you can do that on your own very much, and it helps your learning process a lot. But basically some examples of how is that used in contemporary times. And we have popular music and the politicization of this. So basically here are two YouTube videos. One is Lee Greenfield's God Bless America in the Trump version. So basically Donald Trump started using that song for all of his political activities as a soundtrack. And now there is a video out there where basically so it basically just glorifies Trump and links or has this background of God Bless America as a very civic religion related song. Pretty unspecific in the terms of, okay, what is the specific religion we're using here? But very specific in the sense of we link that to the American way of life. This means how do we experience being American in that time? Now, this is very much linked to Trump in that context, so it's a very nice example for analysis. And the second one is a completely different perspective. It's also called God Bless America. and it's from an African American perspective. So people of color, and what is the perspective if you grow up in a certain hood, if you grow up in a certain context, have a certain perspective, and potentially, not only potentially, but actually, a context that is quite different from what Trump and other white people who came there as settlers or whose ancestors came as settlers ages ago and then who follow this idea of manifest destiny and basically have the privilege of being white in a white society. So we have two very different perspectives here, and Lil Wayne's video is thus very interesting because it just gives you a counter perspective, and it's so different. And still, it links this civic religion or civil religion theme to America and also to how do people experience that. So even though it is basically going against the notion that Trump and the other video propagate, so even that goes against that, it is still linked to those themes because it uses them as we are going against that. So basically, we do have a certain common idea of, okay, what is that about? If you want to describe and analyze those videos, that would be the steps you should maybe use, basically going from description to analysis and then interpret it based on that so that you can basically just use your resource and knowledge as good as possible. And then we have the topic of martyrism and sacrifice very prevalently today. And here we have basically two questions. How are these narratives used today? And how does this maybe resemble culture wars? Because as you can see in the picture of Charlie Kirk, we have him as a Christian martyr. Oops, that's American civil religion, but it's tied to Christianity out of a sudden. So basically, we are making it very specific here, or the people who made that graphic make it very specific here. So basically, the question of, okay, American civil religion, is it Christianity? Is it not? What is it? So we could say that this is a culture war. On the other hand, we have a picture of Donald Trump again, when we had someone trying to assassinate him, and he was basically shot, but he wasn't killed. So basically, here we have a picture right after that, and he basically raises his fist in a fighting gesture, in a victory gesture, and basically, you have this idea of, okay, he uses this incident of being shot to propel something. And this is also what he, in the later inauguration ceremony, described as he was saved by God. So basically, he uses this idea of sacrifice and basically even basically potentially dying for the country, but in his case, being saved by God. So linking incidents to American civil religion and the godlike system. And one more topic, I will, as I said, not go into detail here, is the school system. If you have read Louis Althusser, and if you remember that I said something about that name before, he does not only speak about ideology, but also about ideological state apparatuses, which are basically the institutions in the system that distribute ideology, like schools. So schools do influence the structures of feeling of a culture. And in the American school system, we can say, okay, we have rituals in class, we have the content of the lessons, we have also screening of teachers, which I find very dramatic actually, because they're basically screened for being woke and distributing woke ideology, even though woke as a word is actually, it is interesting because it's taken from a context where it actually meant the complete opposite of what it is used as now. You can just Google that. I won't go into that. It's coming from, I think, what was it called? African American vernacular, I think, is the language variety it comes from. And I Googled that ages ago, it just popped into my mind right now. But basically, the idea of, okay, we're screening our teachers, they must have certain convictions, and if they don't have them, we can't have them as teachers. So basically, we are having certain people there, we're having certain content there, we have certain rituals, and they are all linked to American civil religion. So basically, to the cult towards the nation, to a certain experience of being American, linking religious tropes to the state as it is. So, if we want to conclude, we can say we have many contemporary examples. We have American civil religion as a field of a culture war as well, depending on who is at the top in the moment and what kind of idea of American civil religion do they have. We also have different perspectives on this glorification due to the sociocultural background. So, for example, a person from an African American background would be in a very different position and have a very different perspective than a person from a white background. And what I would also say here is that American civil religion is closely entwined with nationalism. So basically, having a shared possibility for all the people in one nation, and yeah, feeding into that idea of we are all united, and the idea of a nation as a shared community linked by, for example, American civil religion. Now, with that, I would say thank you for your participation and listening and watching, and see you next week in the next video. And if you have any questions, drop me a message or also comment below that video. Thank you very much.